Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this ongoing webinar series developed and delivered by National Association of Peer Supporters. I'm Justin Beattey, he, him pronouns. I am Vice President of Education and Credentialing at an organization called Mental Health America of Indiana. Today I'm representing one of our programs, the MHAI Stanley W. Kemper Training Institute. We are a training partner with N.A.P.S in this ongoing education here in New York to help make sure you get information to grow your professional development of peer support. So as the title when you registered says, we are going to talk about the leader within, how we're developing the skills to support our professional growth. One of the things we've seen historically in a lot of situations related to professional peer support is looking at how we develop this into a career. Historically with this field, a lot of times, unfortunately, it's been looked at that it's supposed to be a stepping stone to some type of career in counseling or this and that, which is, if that's your career trajectory, that's awesome. But we want to let people know that peer support is a career in and of itself. It shouldn't be looked at as only a stepping stone to some type of clinical or treatment approach to things. And so as part of this, a lot of times, several of us don't get the development and support we desire to really look at who we are as a professional and what can happen. So I'm going to share a couple slides here, and then we're going to put you into small groups for a few minutes to kind of have a conversation and whatnot. So let's start by looking at what we are going to learn today. So I will give it just a second so those slides can load. All right, so as I mentioned, in a partnership with N.A.P.S, we're exploring the leader within, developing the skills to support our professional growth. So what do we hope you get out of this course today? Is to recognize that we all have leadership ability, identify leadership skills, and develop a plan to grow our leadership skills. One of the things that's important about these webinars, and I think we've all felt guilty of this at some point, is that we go to them, we're super excited, we're like, ooh, that's a bunch of great information. And then we go right back to what we were used to doing and don't actually use that information. Maybe we took some notes and a month or two later we find those notes and we're like, oh yeah, I didn't really do very much of that stuff. Now some of you are like, nope, I do every single thing I learn and I do it really, really well. So I hope that is the case with most of you, but that's what we're going to talk about through here as well, as taking what we've learned. So what we're going to do next actually is we're going to identify our experiences, because part of this, I'm going to take down the slides as we talk about this briefly and think about this, is we have all been a leader at some point in our lives. We have. And so as part of this, what I want you to do is I want you to identify a time in your life that you were a leader. So think about that for a few moments. And as part of this, that could be professionally. It could be looking at, hey, I'm currently a leader at my job. I do A, B, and C. It could be, let's say you were in some type of scouting program in middle school, or high school or elementary school, where you were a leader of a den or a troop or something like that. It could be that you were an identified leader on a sports team. It doesn't really matter what it is. But what we want you to do is think about that time from that and really what's went on. And Casey, are you there?
I am here.
Can you put them in breakout groups of about 5 people each? I don't have that option on the bottom of mine.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to put you into breakout groups for 10 minutes to have about 5 people in each group roughly. And what we want you to do in there is pulling on that experience as a leader, talk about it, really kind of look at it. What traits, what skills did you use to be a leader in that situation? And what was your experience like? Give each person an opportunity to share. We encourage you, if you're not on camera, that's absolutely okay, but make sure in the small groups that you engage. We don't want someone just in the group by themselves. So make sure that it's a discussion for this 10 minutes. to really explore what was your experience like in that leadership, and then what skills and traits did you use. And so Casey, when you're ready, you can go ahead and send them over there, and you'll have 10 minutes to have that discussion, and then think about those skills and traits, and we'll explore that when we get back.
Okay, here we go. Hi, Lynn. We just moved into breakout rooms, so let me put you into one. Folks are talking about identifying a time in their lives that they have been a leader. So let me.
That was quick.
That was.
Awesome. Well, hopefully for everybody, that was a productive conversation, and that you maybe learned from some of your peers in this group, kind of, what are some behaviors they see in leadership, some things they find successful. And so what I'm going to ask you to do next is I would like you to put one of those traits or behaviors in the chat. And so if you're familiar with how to use the chat, go ahead and do that. If not, if you hover over the bottom of your screen, you will see that one of the prompts down there is the chat feature. Little cartoon dialogue bubble box that says chat underneath it. Click that, and you can just type one of those traits or behaviors in there. One of the things I encourage you to do as well, kind of here in a little bit, is you'll notice above where you're typing, there's typically 3 little dots that says save chat. And so once everybody has theirs in there, I encourage you to save the chat if that's been a feature that's been enabled. So that way you have a list from your peers of what they find to be desirable or traits that are effective in leadership. So as you're looking to develop yourself as a leader, you're not just trying to pull from your mind, trying to pull from hopefully you typed the right words in Google, or any of that kind of stuff. That this is from others who work in a similar profession as you, of what they recognize as leadership traits, leadership skills, and things along that. I mean, we're seeing things like empathy, teamwork, organized, unbiased entry into every meeting, willingness to learn, collaborator, don't overshare, communication, so many different things in there. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to jump into some more slides to kind of look at what are some generally accepted best practices and what are some suggestions related to recognizing that you more than likely have a lot of leadership skills within you, either from your lived experience or things you've seen modeled that you feel to be effective. But just as important, we've seen things modeled that we find not to be effective. So let's kind of look at some different things around this. I'll wait just a second for that slide to load. And so what is leadership? One of the things we want you to consider from Helen Keller is optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence. Like, we want to make sure that you are confident that you have the skills and traits desirable to be a leader in various situations throughout your professional career. So when we think about this, let's start to look at what the difference is between leadership and management. Because a lot of us, are more used to hearing the word manager, and that kind of stuff. But there is starting to be a more focalized movement on understanding that leadership is different than management. So what is one of the first pieces of this? So managers are there to tell people what to do. They assign and delegate tasks and tell people how to complete them. Managers maintain structure in their organization by the book and aren't as focused on creativity, collaboration, or innovation that pushes their team to grow. One of the things a lot of us who have maybe moved into peer support from other careers may have noticed for a lot of people that work in the peer support profession is peer support is still growing. It's still adapting. It's still changing, because when we look at the full history of work in general, professional peer support, working in different environments and that kind of thing is relatively very much in its infancy as far as a professional, thing. But it absolutely is a profession. Most of us are used to moving into a role where somebody's done it for years. We were probably trained by somebody else who does it. Somebody was retiring. There's all these policy and procedures around it. And some of you may have the benefit for that in the roles you're in now, but some of you may have went into somewhere where you're the first peer. Maybe you're being trained by someone so you're not the first peer, but they've only been there maybe 3 months longer than you. And that you're working part of a new program. You're working on a new grant-funded initiative or this and that. So one of the things that's incredibly important when we think about leadership within the peer realm is that we're listening to our teams and we're creating the atmosphere where that creativity, collaboration, and innovation can happen so that we can continue to develop and move forward. Hopefully to some of you, this is sounding similar to what we do in peer support when we're providing services and support to someone we're working alongside, because we with them want to establish that creativity, collaboration, and innovation in what they consider a successful lifestyle for themselves. When we think about a leader takes a more abstract, qualitative approach when it comes to how they relate to their team. As Simon Sinek, and it's okay if you're not familiar with who he is an English-American author and inspirational speaker on business leadership. He has books that include Start With Why and The Infinite Game. If you're someone that likes to watch videos or little snippets, reels, that kind of stuff, he has all kinds of stuff out there. He has some really good things I encourage you to learn. And he tells us that leadership is about making others feel safe. I think if we're honest with ourselves, and I don't want to bring up any less than favorable situations, most of us have probably been in a situation where we didn't feel safe with our manager. And I use that word manager very specifically, because that's not leadership if you don't feel safe in that environment to talk, to share. And that's what leads to that creativity, collaboration, and innovation we were talking about that leadership uses and can be stifled by managerial situations. Because leaders prioritize and are responsible for the people on their team and their growth. They seek to have a healthy, open dialogue with their team and aren't afraid to ask for feedback or give it in a helpful way. One of the great things about leadership and leaders is that they really take a true collaborative team approach to everything. They don't look at it as us versus them. They just look at it as us. And so let's start looking a little bit more at what is the difference between leaders and managers. And one of the first things we see in leaders, as I was just speaking about, is empowers their team. Really looks at their teams from a strength-based approach of what does everybody have going for them? What do they bring to the project? What do they bring to this collaboration? Managers are more about keeping the power. One of the things you'll notice when you look at verbiage, like it says down here, is managers, a lot of times you'll hear I did this. What you hear from leaders is we did this. They recognize there's not success without the collective group of the whole. Leaders also coach and guide. They work alongside members of their teams to help bring them forward to what success looks like. They ask thoughtful questions as part of that, like what is needed for success? What can we do to support you? What we see with managers is more delegates and dictates. This may come off in more of like, well, you know what your job description says. Read your job description. If you're grant funded, it might be, well, just read the scope of work. That'll tell you what to do and then go do it. And that's what we don't want, because that doesn't create the safe environment. Leaders have a growth and future focused mindset of what are we doing? How does this support everything? And how are we moving everything forward? And how does the now support the future? A lot of times we see managers focused on hitting short-term goals and also looking at ways that they're checking boxes. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes we have to focus on short-term goals. We have to check boxes, but we have to ensure if that's part of what we're doing right now, we're looking at the collaboration and the support of how does this help us moving forward? Leaders ask, managers command. They tell people what to do. One of the things I've always joked about, but I truly feel this is, you'll have a lot of managers act like they're the one who signs the check. Every place I've ever worked, there's really only one person that's paying you, and it's not ever been my manager. They've been receiving a paycheck just like me. I've not ever worked at a place where I worked directly for the owner and no one else. But managerial thing is they make you feel like they're the owner, and that if you don't do what they want, you don't get your paycheck. Probably isn't that way, but they sure want that control to make you think like that. Leaders instead, they care about results. What is the outcome of what we're doing? But that result includes you as the team member, not just the person you're supporting, not just the organization. It cares about the results for everybody involved. Managers care about process and efficiency. Well, I understand that you're supposed to be scheduled 40 hours a week, but you just can't get what we assigned you done in 40 hours a week. And process and efficiency says that you need to work as long as necessary to get what we scheduled for you done. A leader is going to collaborate with you and care about those results and understand that part of those results is your well-being, your support, and that if you're not at your best, you may not be able to provide the best support for the people you're working alongside. Leaders take responsibility and managers place blame. You'll hear a lot of times from managers, that's so-and-so's fault. One of the greatest traits I've been taught around leadership is a leader being humble enough to recognize that maybe it isn't the team member's deficiency. Maybe it's my leadership or the organization's deficiency that didn't provide what was necessary for the team member to be successful. That's one of the biggest things around responsibility. Instead of saying, Justin, you didn't do this right, it's approaching it from the standpoint of, Justin, what can we do to help this be successful next time? What do you need from me? What do you need from our organization? And that's accepting that responsibility. Another thing is leaders give away credit. Oh, no. I understand I may be the one presenting this, but it was really my team that did all this work. Our team just did this. And actually, one of the ways I encourage to go a step further is specifically highlight your team. If there was a member of your team that did well, say things like, Jennifer was a key part of this. We couldn't have done this without Digna. So while they don't get to be up here presenting this, I want to make sure people know Jennifer and Digna worked incredibly hard on this. And that they're the reason we're up here talking about this and have this success for this program. A manager, I just think that it was due to, the hard work and me just staying on top of the team that we got this done. We had to work so many tireless nights, but we got there. and blah, 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 blah. I'm glad I'm up here, the one talking about this. What we see it different with leaders is a vision and direction. And equally important of a leader having that vision and direction, they articulate it and explain it to their team, and going back to that collaboration, learn from their team. What does it mean for a collaborative vision and direction moving forward? Managers, they just come in and tell you the plan and purpose. The purpose of this project is A, B, and C, and here's how we're going to do it. And meanwhile, Danielle's like, tell Justin ain't done this job before. That's not possible. That was definitely thought of by somebody sitting at a desk who's never been out in the field working with the communities we work with, because ain't no way this is going to fly. A leader is going to be alongside of you and showing you how. A manager, they're going to tell you what. And that's what I was previously just sharing about as well. Leaders, focusing on people. The group, the collaborative, the community, your team members, and also understanding that for organizations where you may have different departments or different interdisciplinary teams or whatever, that it's everybody's involved. How does what we're doing impact all the different things that's happening? Managers are just focusing on the work, not the people that are doing the work, not the people that are impacted by the work. And so when we think about this, what's needed to be a leader? So as part of this, we look at authenticity. And around this, when we're authentic, team members will value the content of our character and passion for the purposes of the services delivered. I think we've all been in a situation where we're just like, this person's going through the motions. They don't want to be here. I don't hear any passion in their voice. I don't hear any enthusiasm. I don't hear any of this kind of stuff. And that really matriculates, really rubs off and comes into your team. It's hard for someone to be passionate when no one around them is passionate. And part of that is believing in what you're doing. Yes, some of us that are at a job for a paycheck, I am the first to say this, that the bills I owe each month, do not let me go give them hugs and tell them I'm a really nice person and they just say, okay, you don't owe us any money. No, I got to have some money to pay them. So I got to go work somewhere to make that money so I have the ends to meet the means of the things I want to do. And so as part of that, do not villainize working at somewhere for a suitable wage. But also, one of the things that makes my heart sad every time I think about it, in all honesty, is for most of us during our working life, we're going to spend majority of our adult life at work. If you look at the amount of hours you take out the amount of time sleeping and really look at the amount of time you spend a week, most of your adult life is going to be spent at work. And so I hope you have a passion. I hope you have a purpose for where you work and it gives you joy, as part of it. Another piece of this authenticity is allowing team members to see your personality and that interactions are personable. You should always do that to your comfort level. It doesn't mean everybody has to know every little thing about you, but it is important that your team members know you're human. This is things like having a conversation. Maybe it's talking about a book you read recently. Maybe it's talking about a movie, whatever it may be. Now, one thing I always add a little asterisk with this is understand not everybody shares to the level of other people. So part of leadership is really reading your team and each team member and learning comfort levels. And sometimes that's just having a direct conversation. Some people are like, I'm at work to work. I don't really think you all need to know every intimate detail of my life. Okay. And then you got other people that are going to tell you everything they did from the moment they got off work till the time they came back to work in intimate detail. And so it's recognizing that you share to your comfort level, but also as part of that, it can help people to see leadership as human, as part of that conversation when they know that you exist outside of work. I can only speak from the people I've met. I don't know any of you, but I've yet to meet a person that just goes in the closet at work and just sits there until it's time for their shift to begin and they come back out. No, there's something else going on in their life when they're not at work. And that can get us more comfortable around people. I mean, think about the aspects of peer support. It's about finding connection, isn't it? Focusing on the similarities and not differences. And so as part of that, let's integrate that into our teams. Another part of this is know the limitations to your knowledge and skills. Just because you're in leadership doesn't mean you have to be a know-it-all and know everything. Some of the best leaders in the world are the ones that surround themselves with really strong people that lift up the areas where they may not be as strong. And that's what equals a full cohesive unit. Most of us are not perfect in every situation. And that's okay, that's human. But as part of that, a great team is built on a leader recognizing where their growth areas are, and then identifying team members that strengthen their growth areas so that you can have the best outcome. And part of that is being honest. So if someone comes to you saying to them, that's not something I'm familiar with. However, let's get an answer. It's one of the things I was taught when I first started providing peer support a long time ago, was be honest when you're working with people. If you don't know an answer, don't try to make one up. Tell them you don't know an answer, but you're willing to collaborate with them to find an answer or find a solution. And that's one of the things I've integrated into leadership. When a team member might come to me and says, hey, Justin, blah, 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 blah. I don't have any idea. I don't know anything about that. What do you know about that? Well, I thought this. Okay, that's awesome. Maybe we try it. Maybe we look for more, but that's being honest. And then the next thing is holding true to your word. If you tell someone you're going to work on something, work on it. I really encourage you in any professional realm, but specifically leadership, do not ever promise people anything. Tell people you'll do your best. You'll explore it. You'll see what you can find out, because that's holding true to your word. We have no idea what's going to come from an outcome if we have to take it to upper leadership, if we're not even sure if it's going to work within this program or this and that. So I really encourage you to use words like, let's see what we can find out. Let me get back to you once I know more. Because that's the way we hold true to our word, because the last thing we want is to be in a situation where Earl looks at me and goes, Justin, you promised. You promised me this would happen. And maybe we have a comfortable enough relationship, Earl will tell me, I don't trust you anymore, man. But more than likely, Earl's just going to be like, next time I go and say something, be like, man, Justin promised this last time and it didn't happen. I don't have much faith in it happening this time. And that's what we don't want. Another key piece of this is inclusion. Inclusion is a word we're hearing more and more and more every day. And so let's talk about what this means related to leadership. It's valuing the skills and experience of team members to use them as resources. Every single person on your team brings life experience with them, brings professional experience with them, different levels of lived experience with different situations. Don't just recognize that, value it as a strength. Value it as something that can advance the mission of your organization, advance the mission of the project you're working on forward, and use that as a resource. Part of that, where we were talking about previously with the authenticity and knowing about different people is, let's say, Haley and I have had some conversations just throughout our career working together, and something pops up in a project, I may pull from one of those previous conversations, one of those previous experiences, to approach Haley and be like, hey, you shared with me previously when you worked at another place, you worked on a similar project. Do you think this is something you could have a conversation with our team about and kind of talk a little bit about your experience there? Because varying perspectives lead to the most successful outcomes. None of us are able to see every single angle, because we've not all had the same life experiences. Life experience shapes us to be the human we are today. It gives us our knowledge. It gives us our wisdom. Most of us want to be valued and respected for our lived experience that's brought us to today. Is that a safe assumption? Then let's make sure we do that with other people. Let's make sure we have collaborative conversations. Not just telling people what's going on, that actual collaborative dialogue is everybody having pieces of it. You know, like that's one of the reasons at the beginning of this, we do that small group breakout for 10 minutes. Is so you can have that collaborative conversation to start learning what leadership means to different people. Because I'm sure if you think back to that, people may have had similarities in traits or behaviors or conversation or how they viewed it, but there also probably were some differences. Doesn't mean those differences were wrong. They're just that, they're different. And that can collaborate to the whole of us looking at things. Part of this inclusion is valuing team members and partnership feedback and adjust as needed. One of the most discouraging things for a lot of people is when feedback is solicited. You know, I'm like, Kristen, let me know what you think about this. Kristen shares their thoughts, and then nothing's done about that. You know, we listen to something Jason has to say. Jason provides some information and we just pretend like Jason didn't ever share anything after that. So that's where not just soliciting feedback for the sake of checking that box. Remember, we talked about that's what managers do, is they check boxes. We do something with the feedback that's provided. Now, don't get me wrong. I will be honest and direct here that not all feedback is feedback that can be implemented. But that doesn't mean that it isn't feedback that should be acknowledged and respected. So let's say that Jason provided feedback that won't work in this situation. I should respect Jason enough to have a conversation and help Jason understand why that feedback's not going to be used in this situation. You know, I talked to Jason, I'm like, Jason, you know, a couple weeks ago, you provided feedback related to the project. After we kind of processed it and looked at it, I'm not sure it's really going to work for this situation, but let me explain to you why. Because that's a teaching and coaching moment for Jason. But it also shows Jason that I respect them enough as a human and as a team member alongside me to have a conversation and not just ghost them from suggestions they provided. We also approach everything with this us approach of that it's a team. You've noticed I've used that word over and over and over and over again, because that's what it's about. When we hear the word team, we think of a group of individuals working together to get a positive outcome or working towards a positive outcome. And there's a lot of studies that show specific using of words does have a positive impact on a work environment. So there's been several studies that have suggested that use of the word team versus words like staff, you know, employees and whatnot has a better positive mental outcome for the individuals involved, but also more motivated approaches to working on a project because they feel involved, they feel included. Huge one, empathy. Respecting the experience of our team members, not just recognizing they have experience, but respecting that. And more importantly, using it, calling on the experiences of different people throughout this to really know what's going on and pulling them in. We're going to create and foster a safe and supportive environment. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means in just a moment. We're going to respect that team members have limits. You know, a lot of us have heard, you know, similar phrases as you can't pour from an empty cup, you know, and that kind of thing. And what it's important to recognize is that I am a very, very firm believer, and unfortunately, it's been my professional experience, not as many people believe in this as I do, is that life should come first and work should be way far down the line if we're putting things in order of importance. Because without life, without happiness, without wellness, I'm going to be a less productive performer in my work environment. And so part of leadership is not just for your team, making sure there's limits, but advocating within the organization as necessary. Is going to your leadership and saying, hey, this isn't realistic. This is not possible. I understand that when you wrote this grant, I understand that when you did your algorithm to figure out production outputs so we can equal this metric to hit payroll and this and that, but dude, it don't work. I'm just telling you straight up, it don't work. And it is much cheaper for us to retain our team than it is to hire a new team. And there's a ton of data out there that proves it is much cheaper to keep your current team members happy than it ever is to approach hiring new team members. And this is part of our job as leadership, is advocacy, because we're going to value those professional boundaries related to personal lives. Part of that is if the person's not working, they're not working. They're not working. Period. End of sentence. Not, oh, well, I only need a few minutes. Man, I know, Danielle, I know it's your day off. Jessica, I know it's your day off. But man, this conversation is only going to take 2-3 minutes. If you got to start a conversation with, I know it's your day off, or I know you're not clocked in right now, don't start that conversation. Plain and simple. Don't start that conversation. It's your job as a leader to implement things that when someone clocks out, walks away for the day, they don't exist to your team until they come back and clock back in or whatever it is to start their work day. That's a true efficient team, is making sure that happens. Because we want people to be able to enjoy their personal lives. We want people to know what's going on, ensuring your team when they're on PTO, when they've taken time off, that they put an away message up, they know not to check their email, and all that kind of stuff. And part of that is us as leaders is talking to a team member before they're taking time off, or just time off throughout the week when they're not working, and understanding what is needed from us as a team to make sure when you step away, Nicole, you don't have to think about work until you come back. Because some of us, unfortunately, are in environments where we're like, Justin, that sounds good, but if I go away for a long weekend, I just have more work when I come back. That's not right. You should be able to pick up right where you left off. That's part of a team environment. It's saying, hey, Nicole's taking some time off. Nicole, what do we need to do for you to make it easy when you come back? Well, really, I got this report due. Cool. What do you need from us? And sometimes that's you as a leader stepping in and saying, Nicole, what do you need from me? Do you need me to help with that reporting? Do you need me to maybe meet with a couple of the people you're supporting this week? If somebody calls in crisis, I'll step right in. I'll make sure we triage that till you're back. That's what leadership and this empathy piece is about. One of the things you see a lot and hear mentioned is something called psychological safety. This can be described as the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and the team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. This is what work environments are all about. So any person at any time can speak up and feel safe and supported and not have any concerns about repercussions, retaliation, or anything, because we know it's for the greater good. And we recognize our organization is not providing what's necessary. So how do we do this? We encourage questions and ideas. We don't just say, hey, everybody, if you got questions or ideas, let us know. And then nothing else. This is something, a new project gets implemented. So I go around and make it a point to go around to each team member. Christian or Kristen, Kathleen, Carolyn, we got this new project coming out. I want to talk to each one of you individually about what that means for you, how it impacts your daily work, what your thoughts are, what your suggestions are, and then I'm going to bring the team together to talk about that to your comfort level. I'm going to lead by example. We don't ever want to be the high person in the castle. Don't ever want to be a do as I say, not as I do. We want your team to look at you as an example of a healthy work environment and healthy outputs. This is a lot easier said than done, this third bullet point, is focus on the situation or behavior and not the person. It's hard to take personalities out of our thoughts. But what we really want you to do is, what is the actual behavior? What is the situation that's happening? because it removes the personalization of it, creates an environment where maybe someone doesn't feel as attacked or supported, or doesn't feel supported because they're looking at it as, okay, Justin's talking about an act I did and not who I am as a human and not who I am as a professional. Part of this is offering alternatives. You know, I can see, Justin, where you thought this was a good idea and it looked like this was going to be the outcome you wanted. Would you mind if I offered you a few suggestions of maybe from my experience where I did something a little bit different? You know, so-and-so shared with me they had a similar experience. Can I offer you some of the feedback that we learned from that? Because a lot of times people make decisions and do things because they think it's a good idea. They maybe didn't know otherwise. And the last thing we want to do is shame them for that and instead educate them. Another thing is express gratitude. Is always tell people, you know, when you have a conversation with them, when they're doing something, tell people thanks. One of the things that's important though, with expressing gratitude is be specific. If you're going to tell someone they did something well, tell them what they did well. You know, don't get me wrong. We all like a little attaboy. Hey, good job. But you know what goes a little bit farther than good job? Is what they did a good job on. And more importantly, how did that good job benefit the project, the person they were supporting, the organization, or something? So instead of just being like, hey, good job, it's, hey, your work on that and how with Diego, you really supported them with feeling empowered to talk to their prescribing professional about the SSRI medication they were on. Like, I really think that showed you really strongly understand the competencies related to peer support and empowering them to, you know, to be directive in their own life. Do you see how specific that was? And that I've given my team member examples that they can pull from in a future situation of traits and behaviors they did well. Be specific when you provide feedback. This builds trust. Allows when situations happen, my team members feel they can come to me and talk open and honestly. Be vulnerable and admit your mistakes and not knowing answers. Don't just sit there and fumble through something. Like, for real, yo, like if you screwed up, you screwed up. Like, don't try to pass the buck. Don't try to blame it on someone else, you know, or any of these kind of things. Like, say, my bad. And take responsibility, because that's modeling healthy, mature professional behaviors. Also, as we talked about previously, if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. Just say that. I don't know an answer. But the key part of telling someone you don't know an answer is offering to help find a solution. You know, I don't know the answer to that, but what can we do to try to find one? Who do you think we should talk to? See, using those open-ended questions and then collaborating. Sounds like we have a few people to talk to. What can my role be in this? Do you want me to talk to a couple people about that? Do you want to talk to people? You help me and take direction from that person. That's true collaboration. Because there's new data that suggests for almost 70% of people, their manager has more impact on their mental health than their therapist or their doctor. And it's equal to the impact of their partner. And then think, if this is the impact their manager is having on them, they're carrying that into their personal life. So do you want people to carry the interaction with you that they carry into their personal life? Do you want it to be positive or do you want it to be negative? Because you have direct influence over that as a leader. You have direct influence over that. So let's think about SAMHSA's peer core competencies adapted for leadership. And so when we look at this, when we think of being recovery oriented, hopefully none of this is a foreign concept to you, but let's think about how we take those SAMHSA peer core competencies and adapt them to leadership. Thinking about recovery oriented. This is for your team members and the communities we serve. How are we focusing on the recovery and wellness of our team, of the community, of our organization? Being person-centered. Focus on what each team member needs to be successful. Another piece of this, we want it to be voluntary. Involve your team so they have a sense of pride and ownership in the project and outcome. Most of us will have a heightened, either internal or external obligation when we feel we're part of something. And that's what we want, again, talking about the team environment. Ensuring it's relationship focused, supportive inclusion so that it's a team environment versus silo. A lot of times with peer teams, they're out working in the field, they're out in the community, but that doesn't mean they can't be part of the team. Create team building things. Have regular leadership meetings where everybody comes together. Have events, activities where you can just be together and be humans. Maybe it's everybody getting together for lunch one day. Maybe it's going to do a team activity, like one of the big things here in Indiana, where I'm from at least, is a new game show thing, where teams go to a thing and they do a game, you play a game show where you play against each other and that kind of thing, and then go out to lunch afterwards. These are great team building things. And then equally important is to be trauma informed. Approach conversations and actions with sensitivity, empathy, and support. Because what we want to do as part of this is really ensure, and I'm going to take the slide down just so I don't want you to think anything has changed, or anything like that. Is recognizing we want to approach conversations and actions with that sensitivity, empathy, and support, like I just said. I wanted to say that again because a lot of us get worked up. We get focused on the outcomes and we forget humans are involved with this. We need to not ever lose the human aspects of our leadership. To not forget that's another person we're talking to. And I don't know how you guys like to be treated. So I always try to minimize the treat others how you want to be treated, because we all like to be treated in different ways, is treat people with dignity and respect. Learn from people what dignity and respect means to them, because it means different things to different people in different cultures. So that's the other important part, is ensuring we've thought of those cultural considerations as well, because many leadership qualities we suggested are already skills we use in our role as professional peer support. Ensuring we follow SAMHSA's peer core competencies in all our efforts supports our beginning development of becoming a leader. And so my challenge to you with this is to actually do something with the information we share with you today. Like, hooray, you came to this for an hour and everything, but you have it in all of you to be a leader moving forward. Implement what you feel will work, be open-minded, be adaptable, listen, and create the change you want to see. I truly, truly thank you all for being here, and thank you for everything and listening to me for an hour, because I'll say it one more time, you all have the ability to be leaders. And so we encourage you to use that. Thank you, everybody.